list all those key actions. Is there anything you wanted to say about it, Greg? Nope. Okay. So we move on then to item 7, the internal audit update of Q1 2025-26. This report begins on page 25. And I believe, Aaron, you're going to speak to this if there are any questions. Is there something you'd like to say before we open it up to members?
I will obviously take the report as read, but I'll just flag a couple of highlights. Good evening, everybody. So the committee has our first progress report since being appointed as the internal auditors for the council. Following the last committee meeting and the approval of the plan, we've made progress in planning and scoping a number of reviews, and you'll see here in the report we've also moved into a number of areas of field work with 2 reviews underway. A number are planned for the remainder of the quarter, including a number that are starting this week and next. Obviously, with the slight delay in terms of bringing the plan to you in July, it does mean we lost our first quarter, but we're making good progress with council colleagues to move forward the plan. A couple of updates in the report flagged that we have had a deferral with regards to the scheme of delegation, but that is with agreement with management regarding an external consultant reviewing that, and therefore we've deferred that to provide an independent review once any amendments or changes are occurring as a result of that review. So what that does mean is we have got some resource in the plan that we will be reallocating to different reviews as the year progresses in terms of any risks that emerge or any other areas that we deem fit. And obviously any changes to that we'll bring to the committee going forward. The remainder of the plan just outlines a couple of sector updates and information and a KPI reporting in relation to our contract delivery. But obviously as we progress with our work, those KPIs will look much more meaningful at the moment because there are a number that are grey until we deliver some draft reports. So happy to take any questions on the progress report.
Thank you, Aaron, for that synopsis. And you'll be delighted to know as you started to speak, you were live to the millions watching. So to those watching, just so it's clear, we just heard from Aaron. Sitting next to Aaron is David Dickinson. Then sitting next to me is Ian Ward, the Vice Chair of this committee, myself, the Chair, Jackie Compton and Greg Campbell. We have present here tonight Councillor Newport, Councillor Stuart Wilson, Councillor Milne, Councillor Vilma Wilson, Councillor Myers, Councillor Marriott, and Janine, with a very interesting surname. How do you pronounce your... Hoeks, yes? Is it Dutch in origin? Flemish, okay, in origin, as the independent person here, making sure we stay on the straight and narrow. Okay, so I'll open up this item to any questions from members present. Yes, Janine. And of course, our independent person.
It's just a quick question to say, I know you've had the delay in starting, but do you think you've got enough sort of there to give an opinion at the end of the year, or will it run over into 26, 27?
So we're confident with the engagement. While we've had slight delay, we're making up for lost time at the moment. So there's a number in review, and progression means that we'll be caught up by the time we get to the end of the calendar year. And actually, the only 2 reviews we haven't scoped are generally those that we would do at the year end as well, in terms of the main financial systems and the medium-term financial strategy as well, which gives us the ability to look back for a period of time as well as look forward. So I'm confident we'll be able to complete all of our work in time for the annual reporting, which thankfully does occur obviously in the early part of summer as we move into 26, 27. So it gives us a little bit of leeway. But yes, I can give assurance to the committee that we will get all the work we need to be done to be able to provide an opinion.
Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. So I was just going to pick up on something you said earlier, that the scheme of delegations had been agreed with management. Sorry, I don't really understand what you mean by management. Could you just explain who you're referring to? Is that what officer has determined that should be removed from audit?
So just to give some reassurance, whilst it's been deferred, not fully removed from our plan, we liaise with, obviously, as a finance function with David and his staff in terms of agreeing why it's not the right time for us to come in and review that. And obviously, as a finite resource, the fact that there's an external consultant providing independent challenge and review, it's felt that we can then follow up on any of the implementation of that independent review and provide an objective opinion of how that gets embedded in terms of any changes for the scheme of delegation.
Okay, thanks for that. Couple more questions on this. So, one thing I've noted from tonight's agenda is that all these reports are for noting. In my LGA training that I had with audit, they said that you shouldn't have any reports for noting, and I've raised this previously. This is just, it's almost like a cursory glance across these reports, and that's not good audit and governance arrangements, from my understanding with the LGA. And I don't really expect you to comment on that, but I'm just really for David, and I'd like him to pick up on that because I've raised this previously. In regards to a lot of these, sorry, I'm just referred to like page 47 in progress. A lot of these dates slip. They just slip all the time. There's pages of dates slipped. What's happening? What's going wrong?
You've skipped on to our second report that I haven't yet got to present.
Sorry.
So I can answer that question now. Or,
it's all right. Yeah, we'll leave it till then. Sorry, I have skipped. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to review these papers before this evening. Sorry.
Any other questions, Councillor Newport, on this item? No. Councillor Filmer-Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to page 44, where I note that a very, in my view, disappointing 9% of the actions on the report are overdue. Can I just ask, as an independent auditor, is that about the figure you would be looking for overdue, or would that be a lot less?
Again, that's the next report, so I don't know if it's best to move on for me to present that. No, that's all right.
Always good to be ahead of yourself, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Newport, than behind. Any other questions regarding this item? Okay, so then if we move on to item 8, the risk update quarter 1. Oh, we'll go to the second appendix then, Aaron, okay?
Thank you. We always keep these reports separate because obviously they touch on separate elements of the internal audit function, so obviously the delivery of our reviews, and then we obviously perform a follow-up of previously raised internal audit recommendations. So this report, again, is an amalgamation of all the previously raised recommendations that we've inherited from the previous internal audit regime. So we were handed, I think the committee may remember, about 41 recommendations from the beginning of July. So we've been working with management to understand the progress against those. So I guess the programme of what we do is we follow up on all high and medium rated recommendations, generally because low is deemed to be good practice, and therefore we get management acceptance of those. So since the last committee, where there was a number closed down previously, as you will see in our report, there was 17 internal audit recommendations that have fallen due. Obviously, 5 of them have been completed, and by completed, that is to evidence provided to suggest that the actions that were raised by the previous internal audit function have been addressed and implemented and embedded in the control environment. We do not close them down until we see that evidence and have that, and where needed and where applicable, we retest it as well. Obviously, you've picked up on your review, and members have already asked about the fact that there are those that are in progress and overdue. So the classification of the two are that in progress means that there is work has been done and we've seen that progress, but it hasn't yet completed, and we give the council an opportunity to provide a revised implementation date. If that second date is missed, that is when it falls overdue per our categorisation in this report. Obviously, what we do when we agree our internal audit reports is work with management, understand what the practical and pragmatic actions are and the timescales that are being provided. So therefore, it's really important when we agree a final report that those timescales are achievable. Otherwise, we result in the situation we have here where actually dates have been agreed, they've slipped because they weren't realistic, and the actions have then spiralled into something a lot larger that's needed to be done to mitigate that risk. So I'm not sitting here saying that I have not got ownership of those dates, because actually I did not deliver that work to agree those dates. But what we're finding now is that that's what happened. more actions required. Therefore, we've agreed that revised date. In terms of the number overdue, if I sit on some of the other authorities I sit on, this is not a high number, just to give some reassurance. However, management are responsible for delivering and implementing these. We as a function are responsible for following them up and getting the evidence to confirm they're complete. So obviously what we try to do here is work with management as effectively as we can to get that information to inform the reporting to this committee. So those that are overdue, we've had reassurances that those revised dates are achievable. And actually, if you look at the number of them, they're reliant on additional resource that wasn't recruited at the time of the internal audit report being agreed. They've now been put in place where applicable, and actually the action plan between then and that date seems much more reasonable. And my colleague Andrew, who's not here, the manager that works with management, attends management meetings on a continual basis to get that ongoing assurance and evidence as well. So that was all I was going to say, but obviously the facts are in front of you in terms of where we are. And then going forward, as we raise our recommendations, part of our quality assurance, just to reassure the committee, is the date correct? Is that achievable? And then what that then drives is a better implementation rate going forward. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Newport.
Thank you. I'm on the right report now. So if we go back to these overdue recommendations on page 49. Sorry, I'm trying to get my head around this. Who agrees these dates and who's actually accountable? Because, I mean, we've got a date here for fly tipping, for example, 1st of the 9th, 2025, and that's been pushed back, 6 months now, till March. And surely that's just poor contract management, in my opinion, because officers are still waiting for Norse to implement something. I mean, we've got no idea about any of the work that officers are doing with Norse. It feels a little bit like they're running rings around us as a contractor. So I'd like to understand who's accountable for setting these dates and why this is happening, because in this progress it doesn't give me that, and the actions agreed are kind of just like, yeah, okay, well, we're not going to stick to any contract. We'll just let them tell us what they want to do, not what we want them to do. This is a failure to deliver service.
Would you like to respond?
It's probably, just to answer your question of who agrees these will be agreed with the relevant operational management within the council who are responsible for that area, and then signed off by the relevant director as well. That's our principle of how we work. Obviously, I can't comment on this internal audit review when it was done in 24-25 or even 23-24 because it was delivered by a different internal audit function. However, it is management's responsibility to deliver these. We keep this relatively high level because there's a lot of work going on in the background, and obviously we try to ensure that this is as an informative update in terms of where it is. But I acknowledge that we can't write War and Peace in these reports. But that question in terms of what's happening with Norse is probably one best directed to management because they are responsible for this action. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So, sorry, I better not lean back. So I'm just using this as one example that with Norse. I mean, that's a slip of 2 years. So, Chair, I think this is worth actually, we need a director to explain what's going on here, because this does not provide assurance to us that Norse are providing the service that we're paying for, and that's what we're here to do: seek assurance, right, in service delivery. And clearly, they're running rings around RDC with what they're doing. If it's taken 2 years and that's still not delivered, then there's a problem. So, we need accountability with this, and that officer needs to be accountable for what's going on. So I'd like to ask this committee to follow up on that and get a report back for the next meeting.
I think, as you've pointed out, Councillor Newport, with a 2-year delay, that is a highly reasonable request, whether it's this committee or Strategy and Finance or scrutiny, I think we need to hear from Norse why we do have a 2-year delay. I don't know if any officers got thinking about which is the appropriate forum for members to quiz Norse.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I can't comment on that particular one because I don't have that information with me, and whether it's Norse come in and be quizzed on that, I think actually what we need, where we've got these updates and they've been running for a long time, I think myself and Mr Dickinson will take this action away to get a fuller update so we can brief this committee on why these are actually running so late and they've had 2 or 3 due dates run consecutively over. I think that would be a reasonable action to come back to you, Chair, with a written response on why that is.
Councillor Milne.
Yeah, on the I think it's the same page as the item with Norse. Item 23 of 24, IT disaster recovery arrangements, which are pointed out to be medium risk at the moment because it was red last year. And we then had Mr Huggins, who was already with Brentwood, was appointed to sort out the problems with, or rather to review the IT security, which brought us now into where we are. And I noticed that the disaster recovery and full documentation, if we did have a problem, and it's likely we might have one, I would wonder if that ought to be read really because of what's happening to industry, large companies, and some of the same large-scale providers provide services for HM government. Particularly, I'm not going to mention them here, but a particular consulting company seems to riddle through this, and they won't answer if they've sorted out vulnerabilities. So that one, in particular, could be really rather disastrous if we actually get completely cut off, and then we've got to try and put everything back together. And that I would wonder why it's been put back from last March now to December. So I know it's probably going to be finished by December, but I never really realised why it was up to 2024 when I was in audit, why we had to wait until last year before we actually had a manager in to deal with all of this, which he's obviously busy doing, you know. But I would query that one in particular. I don't think it should be just a medium risk. I think it's worse than that at the moment because this country is under some sort of attack from somewhere. Anyway, thank you. I don't know what the view is on that, about the grading of it.
And it's certainly affected by ability to shop at Marks and Sparks, which was disastrous. So can we just clarify then regarding the IT issue? So we've got vexing my colleagues is the fly tipping, which I perfectly understand because that's something very visible that does concern our residents. IT, because of a number of far larger and more powerful organisations are being brought to their knees about that. So could we just have clarification about the IT aspect?
Chair, I think it was also about the grading. The question was about the grading. Is that what?
Just clarify the question, please, Councillor Mayor.
It's about the grading, but also really I thought it should be more urgent than it looks because it should have been dealt with by March for some reason. It could be we're waiting for a third-party provider. That's the other thing, isn't it? You know, can be a problem.
So we've got the grading and the delay, I think. Okay, thank you.
So whilst this is a report that we inherited, the grading is predominantly driven by the formalisation of the documentation. So what this isn't saying is that there is no IT disaster recovery plans, etc. It's about enhancing them to ensure they're formally documented. So having a technical spec. That would be my understanding of why. Because if there was no IT disaster recovery plans or anything in place, that would be, as you say, Councillor, high or critical risk and would have to be addressed much quicker. So therefore, this is more about enhancing and the formal review of those on an annual basis. So what the report probably found is that it wasn't being reviewed as frequently as it should be.
Sorry, can I just clarify? Councillor Vilma Wilson, has your question been answered? Yep, okay. I think I have Councillor Ward wanted to ask a question, then I'll come back to Councillor Newport.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, it's just on reference, it's page 47, and it's item number 8, I am looking at the various dates on that. It's saying due date 30th of the 9th, which is just passed. But it also says that it would go for approval to the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee on the 23rd of the 9th. Would that, can I assume, I don't like assuming anything, but now that is now closed because it has gone to approval, it's been approved?
If it has, yes. This is just a timing difference
just the timing
because of the papers.
Between what's on here. Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed.
So I note from the ones that are overdue, which are the ones we are most concerned about. I understand that some of them are regarding policies, the last two about an overtime policy, about travel and subsistence policy. I guess that's all protecting public money. I understand that takes some time to formulate those policies. But the time we're hoping to get it done by the end of this year, that is over a year delayed. And then also, I don't quite understand why recommendation 6 is taking so long when it seems to be a simple thing of adding a value-based question to an interview process. So that's something I'll be keen to get some clarity about at the next meeting. But I'll come to Councillor Newport now.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And just coming back on, sorry to pick the bones on page 47 on the IT disaster recovery arrangements, but in there, in the recommendation, it says about being fully documented. We don't seem to have a recommendation about it, an actual test for that disaster recovery. Has that been included, or is that included in that, in the IT disaster recovery arrangements, but not written on there? Just sort of seeking assurance whether those, it's all very well having that it documented, but if it's not being tested from someone that's worked in disaster recovery for quite a long time, if it's not tested, then we don't know if the document's any good, do we?
So obviously this is a report that would have been presented to the committee back in 23-24, and I haven't got it in front of me, so I can't confirm all of the findings that relate to that review. But the fact it's not sitting here as being outstanding would suggest that it has been tested, or there was a recommendation in relation to that. It's been addressed in time. However, the only way I can give you that confirmation is by going back to the original report, again, that was by your previous internal auditors. So I'd have to go back to the pack that was provided to us. Because I didn't deliver that review, I haven't got the full knowledge of what was in scope, out scope, and all the findings. This is just what was outstanding in terms of the findings that were raised.
Okay, well, not trying to haul you over the coals, but if the documentation hasn't been completed and it's still being finalised, then it wouldn't have been tested. So there needs to be, that needs to come after the documentation. No?
Correct.
Logically, I would have thought that would have been the process. Document, test, revise documentation if the test didn't work, or it did work.
But what the recommendation is saying is that there was procedures in place, they just weren't fully reviewed and up to date. So I think there's six recommendations that have been addressed in this internal audit review. So if there was any issues with the testing, I probably think it would have been raised as part of the findings. But I think we should take it offline, go away, and understand what was in the report, what's been completed to date, and therefore give you that assurance that whether testing was raised or not.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. It's just, it's basically the language that I'm just looking at here from a legal point of view, through the recommendations, especially on items, let's say 8, 9, and then recommendation 1 going on to the next part. But the word should, I do have a problem with the word should. I'm wondering if it should be must, because it's a legal definition which should gives leeway where must is obligatory. And I'm wondering if must should actually be the word in there which gives confidence to people as opposed to should.
I feel like I'm constantly saying that we didn't write this report, but that isn't language that BDO use, just to assure you. So our reporting template will be really clear about what is required and what isn't required, basically.
Thank you very much. Well, obviously, this aspect of the report and this appendix is vexing my colleagues. So I think we do need to make sure, and I assure you members, that the next agenda for audit will reflect that in the agenda of the meeting, doing a deep dive into each of these that are in progress and those that are overdue. Before I close this item, are there any further questions from members? No? Okay, thank you, colleagues. So now we'll move on to item 8, the risk update for quarter 1, 2025-26. This report begins on page 53. Okay, do members have any questions on this item? Councillor Vilma-Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just I've noted here, I haven't found, I'm not on the right page, but anyway. Appendix 2 gives recommendations and then doesn't state what actions have actually been taken. And then Appendix B on page 63, is this the committee day and who actually is responsible for the actions, please?
So I'm assuming, David, you're going to answer those questions. It was about dates next to the recommendations for achievement. Is that right, Councillor Wilson?
Appendix. Okay, my first question was Appendix 2.
Yep.
Which would help if I could find it. I've got it. Right, okay. It gives recommendations. It doesn't move on to say what action, if any, has been taken for the recommendations. The following page, page 63, Appendix B, lists basically the action that needs to be taken with suggested timescales. Suggested timescales always bother me because that doesn't tie anyone down to anything, and it's wonderful to have suggestions, but that's not actions. Thank you, Chair.
Between you and Councillor Ward, I feel like I'm in an English lesson today.
Apologies.
Right, okay, so moving on, I think what's being expressed is perhaps the action plan slightly flimsy. I think that's what we're saying here, in terms of no clear dates for achievement and lack of clarity about how the actions are going to actually be achieved. So if you'd like to answer that, David.
Thank you, Chair. So that's the next step. So they've carried out a review, they've come up with these recommendations, then there will be meetings with CLT and CMT to discuss actions, and then there will be an action plan with key dates, which we'll report back in, I think it's January, or at the next meeting. But this is just to highlight the work that Zurich has done to date, but there is still work to do. And then out of that, the strategic and operational risk register will be updated.
Councillor Newport.
Come back, Chair. Can I just say thank you very much for that. If that had been put on the report, that would have been really helpful. So this is coming back to ask the Audit Committee in January, yes?
Yeah, that's the understanding. Hopefully the work would have happened by then. We've already, in fact, confirmed some dates with Zurich to come and have the training and the engagement, and then it should be by January.
If it wasn't, Councillor Wilson, I think it is now. Okay, so Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chair. So if we can go to page 61, can I just check that we are looking at the right report? Because it says here, list of interviews and documents reviewed. It's great that they've reviewed documents from Brentwood Council and their corporate plan, but did they actually look at ours?
Yeah, so they looked at both councils. So sorry about that. It should say Rochford on there.
Any other questions, Councillor Newport? Any other questions from any other member? No? Okay. So once again, this report is for noting, as all reports are, for noting this evening. Okay, so item 9, statement of accounts. This report begins on page 65. And again, this report is for noting only. Do any members here have any questions on this item? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a comment that I felt that was an exceedingly comprehensive report. Thank you.
Always good to give praise where it's due, Councillor Wilson. Thank you. Indeed, very comprehensive. So can I just ask what happens with this rather large piece of work now?
So it will be audited. So the audit's starting. It normally should start in about July, August, but it's starting next week, and they'll audit it, and hopefully a report will be approved and everything, and it will come back with confirmation before the deadline, which is around middle of February.
Is it starting early in October, or is it overrunning from the summer?
In historical terms, it's quite delayed, but in the current climate in the last 3 or 4 years, October seems to be the time when a lot of the districts and boroughs get audited. So they've already audited Essex and some of the bigger councils, and now they're working through all the districts.
So once again, that report was for noting only. So we move on to item 10, the Treasury Management Report for Q1 2025-26. This report begins on page 165. And do members have any questions? Councillor Newport.
Sorry, Chairman. Is this report, sorry, because I didn't have time to look at these papers. I've just picked up on something, David. On page 124, it might have been on the previous report, there's a reference to some trusts, some small trust funds, and one of them says King George Playing Field Trust. Sorry, I'm not aware of that trust, that was all.
Could anyone shed any light on trusts?
I'll need to get back to you on that. It just says King George Trust, but I'll see if that's one that it looks like it potentially is closed.
Councillor Milne.
The only King George Trust I'm aware of is the one that's really administered by Rayleigh Town Council, and they have separate accounts for it and everything. I wasn't aware RDC had a trust for it.
I think the note just references it, but it doesn't have any figures for it. So I think it's just to reference maybe a related party or something to the council.
Any questions here from those members of Rochford District Council, or indeed with their hat on as Rayleigh Town Council?
Sorry, Chair, if I could just ask, is there a King George Park in Brentwood Council? Just wondered if that might have got mixed up, might have been a typo somewhere, don't know.
Is there?
The accounts are prepared completely separately from Brentwood and Rochford. We've got two different offices, so it's unlikely. So I'll just go back. It doesn't say Park on it, I think. It just says King George. So I'll do a double check, but I think that's probably a valid one. It might be one that's been carried forward a couple of years, but I'll double check.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, and we'll seek to clarify further at our next meeting. So we move on. That report again was for noting, members. So then we move on to item 11, the committee work programme. So if we go to our next meeting in January, we have again the Q2 Treasury Management Report, cybersecurity update, which I'm sure will please Councillor Milne there. So perhaps we can have a real deep dive into that. The Q2 internal audit update and review of the work and outcomes for the Freight House and Mill Hall as well. Quarter 2 risk register update, the update on the annual governance statement and actions, and review of the whistleblowing policy. I'm just wondering on here if we should have another update about the peer review, or is another committee taking on that now?
Thanks, Chair. The strategy in January is being reported for after the 6 months, so it's already going to the strategy finance.
Okay, there's no point in repeating it and doing things twice. I think we will have a deep dive into all those in progress and at risk aspects to the appendix or appendices that we looked at tonight. So we'll make that a separate item where we deep dive into those for January. Is there anything else any other member would like to add to our meeting in January? Okay, so then we move to our meeting in February. So quarter 3 treasury management, quarter 3 risk register update, quarter 3 internal audit update, and 2025 internal audit plan. Okay, anyone with a crystal ball that would like to add anything else? If not, we'll review again at the end of January, and I'm sure we'll add items to the February meeting. And then some optimism of June 2026 as well, but that's very scantily there at the moment, so we'll look at that later. Okay, anything to add, members? Again, this report is for noting only. Okay, so everything's been noted this evening, I hope. Okay, so before I conclude and close the meeting, are there any other questions from any member present? From our independent person? And would any officer of the council like to add anything else this evening? No? Okay. So therefore I close this meeting at 11 minutes past 8. Thank you very much.